Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lital Shemesh, and coming up in today's newscast, millions of Israeli kids return to school today as the teachers' strikes come to a close. Decades of negotiations finally ended as Germany ups its offer to the families of the 1972 Munich Massacre victims. And later, an exclusive interview with former US Envoy to the Middle East, Jason Greenblatt. It's officially the end of summer break today as millions of kids and teens head back to class. The first day of school arriving as planned thanks to a last-minute deal between teachers and the government. ILTV's Aaron Poor is reporting.
Some 2.5 million Israeli students are arriving for their first day of school today, and as is tradition, the day is dedicated to festivities, ceremonies, and meet-and-greet activities with new teachers and classmates. And greeting them at the entrance is some 218,000 educators at over 5,400 schools and 22,000 kindergartens across the country. Likewise, President Isaac Herzog wishing students and teachers alike a blessed new year as he and his wife Michal welcoming a group of new first graders at the president's residence. But all of the celebrations were inches from cancellation and delay amidst a long ongoing dispute between the teachers' union and the finance ministry, a dispute that finally ended at nearly the last possible second. And among the tenets of the agreements, salary increases both for starting and experienced teachers, and reforms to humanities high school graduation exams. New teachers will now receive a salary of 9,000 shekels per month, and with bonuses for excellence and initiative of up to 1,000 shekels. Then, after 3 years of teaching, they'll get a raise to 10,000 per month as incentive to stay in the field. Principals, meantime, will earn starting wages of 19,000 per month, and they'll be able to hire specialists from outside the system as needed in special needs classrooms, for example. Then, in return for these demands, there will be a streamlined process to fire teachers and a 3-year wait to qualify for tenure. Further, teachers will accept a change to their vacation days to better match up with the working parents who struggle to find childcare when schools are in recess. And then finally, another deal simultaneously reached with the Secondary School Teachers Association to shorten the school week to 5 days.
Good luck to all. Decades of negotiations finally ended as Germany ups its offer to the families of the 1972 Munich Massacre victims, and the victims reportedly agreeing. ILTV's Kayla Eberling with the details.
Germany and the families of the Munich Olympics massacre now reportedly agreeing on a compensation package ahead of the 50th anniversary memorial in Germany on September 5th. The Israeli families of the 11 murdered Olympians in 1972 previously threatening to boycott the ceremony over what they called an insulting initial offer, and decades of stressful negotiations just to release details of the attack and bungled rescue attempts.
Nobody has an idea what kind of Via Dolorosa we went through to get information, to get the documents, to get anything that everybody should get after such a disaster. It's unbelievable.
But now, Berlin reportedly upping its offer to 28 million euros and acknowledging responsibility for the terrible suffering caused. And in return, the families of the victims have agreed to attend the ceremony, along with President Isaac Herzog. Herzog and his German counterpart, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, releasing a joint statement saying, "We are pleased and relieved that an agreement on historical clarification, recognition and compensation has been reached, shortly before the 50th anniversary." During the Munich Olympics on September 5, 1972, 11 Israelis from the Olympic delegation and a German police officer were murdered by the Palestinian terror group Black September.
Opposition chief Benjamin Netanyahu has launched efforts to ensure the Haredi party, United Torah Judaism, remains united. Meanwhile, 60 days to the elections, but according to the polls, it's still anybody's game. Joining me to discuss is Gil Hoffman, Executive Director of Honest Reporting and former JPOS political analyst. Hello, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure being with you, Lital.
So Netanyahu is now focused on ensuring his right-wing and religious supporters will maximize their electoral potential.
That's right. And Netanyahu is a master at making sure that votes are not wasted. He first made sure that the religious Zionist Party and Otzma Yehudit Jewish Strength Party would run together, fearing that right now, even though Ben Gvir is popular in the polls, that could nosedive and he could fall below the threshold, and you could have, as what happened 4 elections ago with Naftali Bennett, out of all people, you had 140,000 votes wasted from a right-wing party at the time not crossing the threshold. And now there are fights within United Torah Judaism. It is Israel's most divided party. It's really divided Torah Judaism between your Hasidic and non-Hasidic planks within the party. And it's unsurprising that Netanyahu is the one mediator who could really bring them together.
Mm-hmm. And I want to ask you, the polls predict an all-time low Arab turnout in the upcoming elections, which will benefit basically Netanyahu.
Look, September 14th, 15th is the date that the lists have to be turned in to the Central Elections Committee. Right now, the different Arab parties are posturing to get better places on the list. They're threatening to run in 3 different lists, in which case it's possible that 2 or 3 couldn't cross the electoral threshold. I don't see it happening, Lital. The parties that are not Ra'am are going to join together. They're going to run together. They're not going to take any chances. And the higher the Arab turnout will be on election day, the more likely it is that Netanyahu won't get 61. That's been proven over the past 4 elections, where the Jewish vote was rather consistent while the Arab vote fluctuated.
What about Balad, who is considering running by themselves?
Look, I understand that Balad wants to receive commitments that that the joint list won't join a government. If it's led by a center-left party, they're very worried that Ayman Odeh will follow the lead of Mansour Abbas and take up his party into the government. They want to rule that out. There's always different kinds of negotiations between the different parties within the joint list. I think that that's a difference that can be overcome.
Mm-hmm. And recent surveys that was published this week gave Ra'am 4 to 5 seats in the coming elections. Do you think there's still a chance they'll sit with Netanyahu and the Likud?
Yes. I think that what happens with Ra'am is absolutely fascinating, because the way it works in politics is you need time to prove yourself. Ra'am was responsible for billions and an unprecedented amount going to the Arab sector, a serious effort to bridge the gap between Jews and Arabs in this country. And a year's not enough for people to really feel the difference. And if they still end up getting 5, 6 seats, then they'll be a force to be reckoned with. Netanyahu would need them to form a government. Netanyahu's made many promises before elections, and the day after the election, he does what he needs to do. And it's different now, this election, than all the other 4, because Netanyahu's not prime minister. To get out Yair Lapid from the prime minister's chair, I think Netanyahu would be willing to break a lot of promises and go a long way.
That's interesting. Let's talk about the current campaigns. Is it going to be around the price of living or security issues, in your opinion?
No. I wish that Israel had an election with depth that would focus on serious issues like the economy, the cost of living, security. There's no evidence that we're going to have an election on anything other than to Bibi or not to Bibi. It's sad but true. We have personality-based politics in Israel, while America has actually become more substance-oriented when it comes to elections. We've become more shallow. Then on the other hand, America's become hyper-polarized and we've become less divided. It's perhaps a fair deal.
Yeah, to Bibi or not to Bibi, the Fifth time in a row. Gil Hoffman, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you, Lital.
Now, in a few short weeks, the world will celebrate the second anniversary of the Abraham Accords. But what will happen to the peace in the region if the Iran nuclear deal is renewed? To find out, ILTV and Israeli Channel 14 partnered for a special discussion with US Envoy to the Middle East, Jason Greenblatt. And joining us now with the details is reporter Asaf Nissan. Hello, Asaf.
Good afternoon, Lital.
So, Asaf, you sat down with Mr. Greenblatt for this special interview. What was some of the main points you discussed?
So some of the main points we discussed throughout the interview, of course, starting with the Iran deal, where, of course, the reasons the Biden administration is running back, what's going to be gained from it by the Europeans, anything all throughout the Iran deal, and, of course, the effect on the Abraham Accords. How would the Abraham Accords deal with the fact that Iran might be heading to a new deal with the U.S.? Is it still relevant? Is the U.S. still a partner here? And throughout the other topics, of course, the Palestinians, the Trump affairs, and we even try to talk about some of the personal stuff, but it's part of what he knows as a former advisor, can pretty much advise on what's going on behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm. So let's have a look.
Then why is the Biden administration so hell-bent on getting Iran back to the nuclear deal?
It's very hard to explain. I think they're looking for a political win. I think if they were to sign it, they would be able to say, well, we've kept America safe. But the subtitle should be, we've kept America potentially safe if Iran really doesn't cheat for a very short period of time. And then the Middle East would become even messier, even more dangerous. It's Afghanistan all over again, but on steroids.
One of the conditions Iran stated for rejoining the JCPOA is their assets will be unfrozen. Is this really a good call?
No, it's a terrible move. Look what they did with it when we gave them all that money under the Obama administration. Missiles were flying toward Israel, towards the UAE, towards Saudi Arabia. Missiles hit an important oil production facility in Saudi Arabia. Imagine what happens now with oil prices. Yes, they're creeping downward a little bit, but we have serious oil pricing issues. Imagine what that does to the world when they start to use that money again to make terrorism even worse than it is today, and it's pretty bad today.
So if the U.S. is ready to go back to the deal, thus weakening the Abraham Accords?
It could be, and that's what I covered a lot in my book. The region is very nervous. They were nervous when we came into the region under the Trump administration because they felt that the Obama administration had totally abandoned them. They're feeling that way now, and at the same time, you're seeing moves to restore diplomatic relations between Iran and some of the Gulf countries, and I don't blame them. I think if they don't know where the wind is blowing and they feel like they're going to be stuck with the Iran deal, which is very, very possible, I think that they need to do something to, in some way, partner with Iran, and that could undermine the Abraham Accords. I hope that the friendship and the business ties and everything else that is developed between the countries and Israel will withstand this change. But if the Biden administration continues down this path, and if it doesn't pick up more than what it did on its trip and respect our friends and allies, in particular Saudi Arabia, a lot of things could change and go in a bad direction.
Another issue you worked on closely was the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and even presented the plan of the century for peace between both sides. Why do you think the current administration didn't try to adjust it to their own needs? Was there anyone to talk to?
We're not the first that the Palestinians have spurned. In fact, we were one of many in a long line of possible deals for the Palestinians. I think the difference in our proposal is ours was extraordinarily detailed. It wasn't just sort of, a couple of words on each issue and then hope and pray that the parties would be able to work together. I do give the Biden administration credit that they're not pushing an Israeli-Palestinian peace deal. They've all but said, perhaps even said directly, that the time is not right, and I think that's true. But they are making all sorts of moves that make me very uncomfortable. One, President Biden did on his visit to Israel, where he visited the East Jerusalem hospital without an Israeli presence. He made it sound like the reason he did that was not for politics, but because he's very interested in healthcare. But we all know everything is about politics. I think that disrespected Israel's capital. I think it disrespected U.S. law. I don't want to say it violated U.S. law, but it's very strange for a president of the United States to go into another country and visit somewhere in its capital without the presence of that country's leadership.
All right, now what else did you discuss?
Throughout the conversation, we also discussed how does he see the 2 years of the Abraham Accords. Actually also talking about how the Biden administration is warning the Middle East and actually hurting the entire efforts the Trump administration did. And also actually referring to the whole story of Shireen Abu Akleh and why the Biden administration is doing a lot of mistakes. Despite the fact that they're not pushing forward, they're still asking Israel to work on an inquiry. They're working together with the Palestinians for their own offices. There's a whole issue of policy and questions of what's going on now with the Biden administration is so hell-bent to destroy, and what will happen if a normal leader comes in.
Interesting. Asaf and Nissan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
And for the full exclusive interview, head to our social media. Moving on, an incredible discovery now revealed in southern Israel, and it's leaving archaeologists with their jaws on the floor. ILTV Aaron Poris with the details.
Just outside the southern Israeli kibbutz of Revadim, an amazing find now shocking archaeologists with its splendor. A massive, complete, and exceptionally preserved 500,000-year-old elephant tusk.
What we are seeing here today is an elephant tusk. It's a straight tusk elephant. It's huge. It's 2.5 meters long. His diameter is 20 centimeters, and you can imagine how much he weighs. One tusk of a straight tusk elephant weighed around 150 kilos.
Archaeologists, meantime, saying that from their previous excavations in the area, they knew it had been settled by early humans in the late Lower Paleolithic period. But this find is the largest complete fossil tusk ever found at a prehistoric site in Israel, or for that matter, anywhere in the Near East, and it offers rare insights to the lives of early inhabitants in the region.
It's unique because the state of preservation is really good. We didn't saw so much preserved tusk like this. We know that this type of animal, the straight tusk animal, disappeared from this area around 400,000 years old. And this tusk is dated to 500,000 years old.
That said, the tusk is extremely fragile and would likely disintegrate when exposed to air, sunlight, or touch. So the excavators are giving it an initial protective treatment, after which the tusk will be transferred to the IAA Conservation Lab, where it will be studied and conserved.
What we're going to do is preserve it. We put a cast on it to make it as preserved as much as possible. Then we will take it out complete to our labs to do a series of analyses to try to define the age, where he was lived, where he walked, the surrounding that he was.
Amazing. Catching light in a bottle, Israeli and Austrian scientists created a perfect light trap. A beam of light prevents itself from escaping, allowing light to be perfectly absorbed. What does that mean, and what use do we have with it? With us is Professor Ori Katz from the Applied Physics Department in the Hebrew University. Hello.
Hello, Lital.
So, Ori, what does that mean, catching light in a bottle?
So actually, it's not exactly a bottle, of course, but it's a way to make, it's a device that can make any material perfectly absorb light. And the reason that we want to absorb light in many instances is, for example, in detectors, when we have cameras and we want to detect a very small amount of light, and even just around us, if you want to catch light energy from the sun to create electrical energy or for other means. So light is all around us, and the way that we can use light is we have actually to interact with it, so we have to absorb it. And this is the use of the device.
What was the process of discovery like? I mean, how did you stumble on this solution in the first place?
Great question, because actually, like in many instances in science and technology, it's a mixture of luck and some thought process. In fact, I was hearing a lecture by the Australian physicist, Professor Stefan Rother. We are also good friends, and I heard it in a conference, and he was speaking about a new device. It was called the anti-laser. So it's a laser, same as a laser, taking the operating principles of a laser and running them in reverse. Instead of taking electrical energy and converting it to light, it's a device that can take light energy and convert it back into other forms of energy to absorb it. But their device, although it was very unique, and I was very excited to hear about that, was limited to absorb, like a laser, just a beam, a very specific beam coming from one direction. And this was a great limitation for a couple of years. And hearing his talk, I realized that we can actually cancel this problem and just solve it with a different design, a different laser design. And we discussed shortly after that, and we just moved forward to creating the experiments that was done in the Hebrew University and the theory and the calculation that was done in Vienna by the group of Stefan Rother.
Wow. Can you try and explain to us in simple terms how does this trap work, basically?
Yes. So actually, it's not too difficult. The main principles are quite simple. So and actually, we have something similar to that in nature. So we want to see very well at night, and some nocturnal animals as well want to see very good at night. So and in order to trap light, to convert light into electrical signals that go to the brain, we have our retina. We have cells that are sensitive to light, but they are not perfectly absorbing. And some light just goes through the retina and gets lost. So some animals, nocturnal predators like cats and owls, they developed a layer of reflecting cells, actually a mirror behind the retina. And this is why cat eyes look yellowish or greenish at night. And this, then the light has another chance of being absorbed. Whatever passed through the retina hits the mirror and comes back.
Wow.
So this is at nature. And we took it a step forward by adding another mirror.
This is why, by the way, the eyes of cats look so scary at night?
Exactly. I don't know about scary, but this is why.
Try to take a picture. Try to take a picture with a flash of your cat, and you'll find out.
Exactly. That's exactly. This is called retroreflection, and that's exactly the process. They have a mirror behind the retina, and this mirror can perhaps increase the sensitivity by 2 times. The light passes 2 times to the absorbing material, and our trick is to add another mirror from the front side, and then the light coming in is trapped in between these mirrors, going back and forth many, many times, circulates in this cavity, and until everything is absorbed. And that's the trick.
Wow. Can you tell us what use will you do with this discovery?
That's an excellent question, because we are not sure about the answer. Like in many academic research efforts, some of it we do it because it's interesting and we want to prove that it is possible. And actually also the laser itself, when it was invented, the inventors of the lasers in 1960, they were telling that there's a very known phrase that they were saying that it's a solution looking for a problem. And the laser quickly found many problems to solve. And we hope that our device will have similar problems that it will solve. We are thinking in the directions of having more sensitive detectors and perhaps in antennas. The theory and the principles can work the same in light and for light waves and for radio waves and for acoustic waves. So perhaps have a better antennas in our smartphones that can absorb all the radio frequency energy. But we are not perfectly sure. This is the first publication, and now we have to think what are the next steps.
Wow. You wrote a patent on it by now?
So actually, for this work, we didn't write a patent, but perhaps the next thing we will. Yeah.
Okay, so ILTV just gave you an idea. Go and write a patent. That's really important. Well, that was fascinating, Professor Ori Katz. Thank you so much for this interview, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies tonight with lows averaging 24 degrees Celsius or 75 Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, top temperatures reaching 37 Celsius or 99 degrees Fahrenheit. And on Saturday, the weather remaining much of the same with temperatures ranging from mid to high 30s. That's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our website, iltv.tv, and subscribe to our newsletter as well as our streaming platform, ILTV+. I'm Lital Shemesh. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.